Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to your second workshop of the day. My name is Emma, and I am with DRI, and I will be your moderator for this workshop today. So any questions or comments you have, you can type them in the chat, and we'll make sure they get addressed. I don't want to take anyone's time, so let's get right into it. Susan Kohler is the current NASA Education Professional Development Specialist for the Educator Professional Development Collaborative Project at NASA Glenn Research Center. With more than 30 years of K-12 educational leadership experience, her workshops feature insights and expertise in instructional strategies and implementation of STEM programs. She taught science for 13 years at the high school level before being promoted to assistant principal, curriculum director, and assistant superintendent. Her credentials include a master's in education administration and research in neurophysiology. As the NASA EPDC education specialist, she has presented webinars and educator workshops across the United States. She has presented at the state and national conferences for the past 10 years. She has collaborated with districts to provide professional development at the building and district level in STEM, engineering, design, and project-based learning. The work includes opening and sustaining new STEM and STEAM schools. Before we get started, I would like to thank our sponsors, Tesla, the lead sponsor of the museum's STEAM education program, and Nevada Gold Mines. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Susan and have her get started.
Thank you so much. So it's good to be here today. I'm glad I have this opportunity to come to you and bring you some of the NASA resources. Just a couple things. All of the NASA resources are 100% free. We do not charge for anything that you get from our websites. We have about 500,000 lesson plans in every area of education. So we have language arts, art classes, art curriculum, we have music, we have all of the STEM areas as well. So we have quite a few lesson plans for you, and everything that we have is 100% free. There's no charge for anything that NASA provides for you. It is all open source. So you click on it and it opens. You never have to give us any of your personal information. We serve educators across the entire world in all countries, and we are delighted to have these resources to share with you. I'm going to use a PowerPoint presentation today. It has hyperlinks on it to the resources I'm going to be talking about. And you will be able to have the PowerPoint. It belongs to you. Please use it any way that suits you. It's yours. There's no copyright on it. If you're going to present it at a conference, take my name off it and put your name on it. That's the only thing I would ask you to do. So let's get started. We're going to talk today about a specific project, program, resource that's available to you. And this particular resource is called Simple Machines, a Shoebox Rover. So it is designed to be used in museums, informal settings, as well as the classroom. I have brought this to workshops at museums, libraries. I've taken it into classrooms of students, pretty much grades K through 12. It is very adaptable to meet and align with all of your standards, and at the same time provide students with quality inquiry lessons. Next slide, please. So before I start with that, one of the things I like to share with everyone is that NASA has 10 research centers. All of these centers, their number one goal is to bring scientists and engineers together for research purposes, always coming up with new ideas, new ways of doing things that benefit all of humanity. So I am at Glenn Research Center in Cleveland, Ohio, up on Lake Erie, where today it is negative 15 degrees. And if you look outside my window right now at home, it looks like the Arctic out there. There is a layer of snow and ice about a foot deep, and it is very, very cold out there. And this morning, it's afternoon here, and this morning we went out to the lake. We live very close to the lake, took a walk down there, and it was absolutely beautiful, but it does look like Antarctica out there. So I work at NASA Glenn Research Center. I work in Building 7. We identify ourselves at NASA based on what building we're in. Each one of these resource centers is a little village, self-contained. We have everything we need to run our community there. We have 142 buildings at Glenn Research Center. So it's a wonderful place. Most of our research at Glenn is on technology. So we are responsible for a lot of the deep space communications, and we communicate with the International Space Center. We'll communicate with Perseverance, the rover that is touching down in February 18th. So we are very busy in communications. We are also a propulsion center. We like to say we have a need for speed. It took us 30 years to get Voyager to Jupiter, and we would very much like to be able to go faster than that in the future. Took 6 months to get Perseverance from Cape Canaveral to Mars. So it takes quite a long time to get out there, and we are always working on getting out there faster. Next slide, please. So this is Perseverance. It's the rover that's currently on its way to Mars. It's following Curiosity, which was our first rover that we landed there that was a complete laboratory, science laboratory. We landed Curiosity, and it was it's about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. So it's a very large rover. That was our largest rover that we've landed on Mars. We have been going to Mars at NASA for 50 years. So we have been busy trying to figure out how we can get astronauts there. And the goal is to get astronauts there. Right now, this particular rover's mission is to find any evidence of life, that there might have been life on Mars at one time. We already know there was water there. There is water there in the form of ice, and we are hoping that we will be able to find some evidence of life existing there at one time. This rover, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it because we're going to design a rover, and we're going to talk about instrumentation on that rover. So you will see here it has a very nice communications package for instrumentation. It's got a beautiful set of cameras. It has antennas to report that data back, and other communication systems on board. It also has a helicopter on board that will be flying from the rover out in front of it to do a kind of surveillance for it. So we're very fascinated by that as well. I think it's very interesting that this rover's name is Perseverance, given the times that we are in right now. Everybody is working from home. Even at NASA, we all work from home. So we managed to get this rover into space in July from home. So that's a pretty good feat. And we did have to use a lot of perseverance. The helicopter on board's name is Ingenuity, which we also had to use a lot of. The particular lesson that we're working on today will require both from your students, both perseverance and ingenuity. Next slide, please. So I'm going to show you a little video. This particular resource has quite a few videos, and I'll refer to them as I continue to work through the resource. The first video I'm going to show you is just watching people actually do this activity, because I'm not there. If I was there with you, we would just get started and start building and talking about it as we went. But since I'm not in person there, I'm going to show you a video of people actually doing this activity.
The lever arm for it. We haven't decided yet what we're attaching equipment-wise, but that's our start.
There's this little camera with a little lens in there.
So it'll look at infrared and ultraviolet and other spectra.
Right now I'm trying to work on the wheels, but this wheel is gonna make for a bumpy ride because the hole is off center.
Audio Jungle.
It's been awesome. This is super, I feel like our Rover could be super successful, and I think this could be a really successful program for our students too.
And for a lot of age groups. I teach preschool and we'll have to modify it a lot, but I think they would love this. So we're gonna figure out how to use it for the little guys too.
All right, so that gives you a pretty good idea. A lot of those that video was taken of workshops for educators. So if you were here, if I was there and I was working there, I would bring all the materials and we would be putting this together there instead of virtually. So that's the best way I have of showing you what the workshop would look like. So these are the big ideas. This is what we're trying to help our students to understand, is that simple machines trace force for distance, and there are 6 simple machines. You can combine these machines to do more complex work. As an educator, I taught simple machines at one point, and I really worked on the individual simple machines. I wish I had had a resource like this that combined all of them together to actually make more compound machines. Next slide, please. Of course, for older students, you want to remind them that work is force times distance, and this is one of the key standards that we have to align with. Next slide. This particular resource has so many things for the educator to use to make this work for you. There are many different videos. There are actually videos on every one of the simple machines, how to make each one of these simple machines. So I think you will really like that. I think they're all under 2 minutes. They're right around a minute, about a minute and 24 seconds. So they are quick, and you can show students who are stuck how to make the simpler machines. Another thing is, you're going to see here in a minute, different kinds of templates that come with this. So you can provide the templates to the students so that they can put the boxes to the little boxes that you see there, things like that together. Next slide. What's important, I think, as far as these are all samples of the simple machines that you see in that picture there. And I think for some of us, we like to show our students an example of what the end result will be. And for some of us, we do not want to show them an example of what they're supposed to make. A lot of this depends on your students and where they are at. And if they are more concerned about what your expectations are. If you have to make your expectations clear, I think it's important to show them an example. Do your students like to have an example, or do you prefer just to have them do full inquiry to figure it out on their own? What do your students like? You can answer in the chat and I can see what you're thinking. That's the only way I can communicate with you, full inquiry, okay. I think a lot of that is grade level and where you are in working with them. Some students have a lot of experience with full inquiry, and some do not have as much. Also, this depends on whether you are working in a library, a museum, after school, Boy Scout, Girl Scout, 4-H, or whether you are in a classroom. I think full inquiry is easier to do in the classroom a lot of times. Next slide, please. It comes with many pictures for you to use in the classroom, and also for you to put out on tables or hang on the wall to give them some ideas about what they might look like, these individual things, to get them started. Just making the lever is not going to make a robotic arm, but understanding how to make a lever may encourage them to try to figure out the robotic arm. So sometimes showing them how to make the simple machine will elevate their thinking and discovery to the next level. Next slide, please. So in addition to making the simple machines, what you want to encourage them to do is make instrumentation for their rover. So they will need a locomotion system, a way that the rover moves. They need robotic arms, things that drill and collect samples, those kinds of things that are necessary, especially the communication aspects. These rovers have to communicate back to Earth what they're discovering, so they need an antenna for sure, and the camera and some way to communicate, a computer system. Next slide. This resource has a glossary for you. So if you are teaching the vocabulary and expecting your students to use the correct scientific terminology and engineering terminology while they are working, there is a way for you to also teach the vocabulary. Next slide. One of the things that's embedded in this particular resource is computational thinking. Computational thinking is very important right now for the future of all of our students and young people. They're going to be expected to think computationally in whatever work they're doing, wherever they go. And computational thinking is really a problem solving with math. It is not necessarily knowing a formula. It is not being able to add, subtract, and divide. It's being able to visualize the mathematical, the computational answer. And this activity really demonstrates that computational thinking and helps you to bring that to your students. Are your students working with geometric terminology, or are they younger than that, most of you? You can answer in the chat and I can see what you're thinking. It helps me to know what's going on. Okay, next slide, please. So it comes with a material list. So if you're nervous about whether you have the right materials, it gives you an idea of optional materials that you can have for the students to make all of these simple machines. I'm going to show you the Susan Kohler materials list as well. So this is the one that comes with the resource. It's very complete. And I think it will help you to plan. My way of doing workshops and working with kids is I go down into my area where I store all the things I recycle, and I throw them in a box and I lay them out on the table and I say, here you go, here's some stuff. My stuff, I call it. Next slide. But they do give you a list. This resource comes with table cards. So you could actually do this like a station lab and have them go around and make the machines at the stations and put out the sample table cards. Table cards are also nice for museums, libraries, and also for science nights, things of that nature. And they're good for the classroom as well if you like to use station labs. So each one of the aspects of building this, there is a card for that you can print out and put on the table to show how to make things and what's involved. Next slide, please. This is an example of the templates that come with this resource. There are many, many, many templates with this resource. They're all online. And once again, I want to remind you, everything is completely open source. You don't have to put any information as you click on it and it opens and then you print it out. I use cardstock when I'm doing this, but that's readily available to me. It might not be available to you. You can use just regular paper as well. It's a little more, it's not as thick as cardstock and a little harder to work with, but you can do it. This particular resource comes with many different rectangles, squares, trapezoids, all different kinds of geometric shapes to make things. It has templates for antenna, templates for wheels. Just about everything if you want it. It actually has a template for making a box. So if you don't want to have your students bring in a shoebox or you don't have a lot of them laying around, you can actually make shoeboxes. So it has the directions for that. Next slide, please. No, it is not the end of my slideshow. There should be about 20 more slides, maybe 30.
Second, yeah, Claire was adjusting something. And it looks like.
Okay.
Sorry.
So one of the things that's going to be next is they're going to show you how to make a shoebox. And if you don't have them bring in a shoebox, which is what I always do when I'm working with this. I like the fact that they're all different. When they bring in the shoeboxes, they're different sizes and shapes, and I love that. Makes for different sizes and shapes of rovers. But this resource comes with a template for making a shoebox. We did this activity at Glenn. So we had people come to Glenn, students, to do this on a STEM day. And we made like about 1,000 of those shoeboxes. And they were perfect, but it took a lot of interns. You think NASA interns are solving scientific problems, but really they're just making shoeboxes. No, that's not true.
Is this where we left off?
Yep, keep going. Okay, stop. Go back. Go back. Go back. Go back. There. Oh, stop there. Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So like I said, there's videos on YouTube on all of these different ones. Next slide. We're gonna go faster now. So next slide. Okay, so this is the Susan Kohler version of the design challenge. When I did this activity, I like to make sure that my students have criteria and constraints whenever I'm doing an engineering design challenge. And so my criteria was that the rover had to travel in a straight line from the starting line past the finish line. So the wheels had to actually work to move the rover. And I had them move 1 meter, 1 meter, so 1 meter stick. And I found that when I set up that particular criteria, 100% of my participants could do that by the end of the workshop or the end of the class. So first they have to go 1 meter, and then you can have a challenge to see how far they can go, if they can go further. I put an emphasis on redesign. There's a lot of redesign involved in this. So sometimes the machines, the pulleys, the levers don't work, and they spend a lot of time tweaking them until they do. I also, when I set this up, I say they have to incorporate a minimum of 4 simple machines that function as instrumentation. So I do not say they have to have 6 simple machines on the shoebox. I start with 4. How do you guys feel about that? Do you think 4 is a good number, or do you want them to do all 6? One of the nice things about having 4 is if I make that the minimum, there's always those students who work a little bit faster than other students and need more of a challenge. And with those students, they will want to go on and make all 6. They will find that that's a challenge that they want to complete. So by having 4, you're going to ensure that the students will have success. I also do not do this as an individual activity. I have the students work in groups of 4, and I think that's really important because they need to learn how to collaborate and work together. So I think making 4, I have 4 students and I have a minimum of 4 simple machines. And some of the groups will assign each person 1 of the simple machines, and then they'll attach them to the rover and tweak them until they work. So I found that that works really well in the workshops and in the classrooms that I've worked in. Okay, you guys have great ideas. Next slide, please. I'm trying to move the slide and I realize okay, this is the Susan Kohler list of materials. So this isn't the one that comes with the resource. So if I'm going out to a workshop or to a classroom to work with students or teachers, these are the things that are on my checklist to make sure that I have with me before I leave. I always ask my teachers to bring shoeboxes to the workshops, or I ask the teachers to collect shoeboxes. When I was an elementary principal for a while, my PTA was really good at things like bringing in shoeboxes. Not every school is the same though, but that always worked for me as well. I always have to have straws and sticks of any kind, including skewers. So I think it's really important to have some skewers with you. They're really good at poking holes in things, and they are also perfect for making a wheel and axle. Masking tape, duct tape, they suggest hot glue guns. You definitely can use a hot glue gun. I've used cold glue guns. I have also used glue sticks. and had a lot of success with that. So I don't think you really have to have a hot glue gun. If that's something that makes you nervous with your students, you don't really need that. Plus, with hot glue guns, you have to have electricity, which means you've got extension cords all over the place, right? So are you pro hot glue gun, or are you nervous about hot glue guns? How do you feel? Any hot glue gun comments? No glue gun. I love you guys. I wouldn't have used hot glue guns in the classroom, but then remember I went on to be an administrator. So that was the last thing I wanted to see down in my office with some kid that got hurt, burned, or whatever. Okay. And I have seen so many teachers use them successfully. I have to actually say that. And if your students are doing this activity at home, like you're having them work on this at home right now because they're all at home, and their parents allow it, I say, yeah, go for it. Next slide, please. So the first thing that they need is what NASA calls a platform. Sometimes NASA calls it the bus. We call it both of those things. And the shoebox will be your platform in this case. When you're making satellites, we also have platforms. And that's an important part of whatever spacecraft you are making, because it holds all the other things, instrumentation and mechanical parts that are necessary. Now, a shoebox is the perfect vehicle for this. You can also use make boxes. They have like I said, you have the template to make them if you want to make them. You can use any size boxes for this. I wouldn't worry about if they bring in a huge box or a small box. I don't think it really matters. If you have groups of students working together and all 4 of them bring a shoebox, I find one of the interesting conversations they have is about which one they're going to use and why. No, that's a good question. That is an excellent question. Is it being detachable necessary? No. Hey, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because in one of my workshops, they brought in the container. When you bring Starbucks to a faculty meeting, do you know what I'm talking about? And it's in that cardboard container with the pour spout in it. One of the groups made their Rover out of that empty coffee. I think Panera has them too, other places that bring coffee out to a meeting. If you guys know what I'm talking about? Yeah, so they work really well. They work just as well. Don't worry about any of that, it will work. Nike boxes don't always detach 100%, right? They have the flap that goes over, I know that. Next. I can talk about boxes all day, and we're not going to do that. Okay, the wheels. The wheels are the next part that's the most important. Now, you can have your students make wheels. I do not have my students make wheels. I do not have my teachers make wheels. And it's for the reason that you saw in the video. The whole activity can get stuck on the wheel. If the wheel is important to you, that they actually make the wheel itself, not the wheel and axle, but the wheel. That's going to be a major part of this project. I would highly recommend that for high school, maybe even 8th grade. Other than that, they're going to get stuck on it, and it's not worth it. So what I do is I provide wheels. Next slide. These are the wheels that I usually bring. I get these wheels. I'm not suggesting NASCO is the only place to get them. But frankly, when I go to workshops and I go to classrooms and I go to districts, they want to know where I got the wheel. They'll tell me straight up, I need to know where you got these wheels so we can get them, because they like them. So I'm going to share that with you. This particular set of wheels has 60 wheels. So I really like that. I think the price is reasonable for 60 wheels. They're bright colors and they're a good size. But the most important thing about these wheels is that the hole in the center of the wheel is perfectly centered. So you're not going to have all that wobbling to worry about. And a skewer, a meat skewer, like when you throw something on the grill, fits right through that hole perfectly. So you can put the skewer through the wheel, put the straw around the skewer, attach the straw to the box, and you have a wheel and axle. They will still have to make a lot of tweaks. So don't think that they are not still going to have some design issues, because they are. They are going to have quite a few, but it is much easier. And even my kindergarten students could make this when they were given the wheel. Next slide, please. It's up to you, of course. This resource comes with a lot of directions for how to attach wheels. And you can go over these with your students, or you can let them discover these on their own. I suggested the simplest wheel, which is the skewer that goes through the hole and then a straw over it. But you can do swivel mounts. I've seen a lot of very successful swivel mounts and hinges on these Rovers before. Next slide. So they also they have directions on how to put it together, how to attach the wheels to the mounts, and gives them several suggestions or ideas in case they get stuck. Next slide. One of the nice things that this resource shows is how to make a very, very, very simple lever. Now, you're going to be asking them to make robotic arms and drills and things that will pick up things. So just by giving them some ideas about how to make a lever, you are not helping them make the instrumentation. You're just showing them how they could make a lever using the straws. Now, this particular lever has straws and then those little push pin things that go through, brads. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say brad? They tend to be like gold and silver, and they have a head on them like a thumbtack, and then the sides fold up to secure it to the straw in this case. But one of the things that I always bring for this particular workshop is a whole box that I have of what I call fasteners. Everything that fastens. So they're just all thrown in a box. I don't try to organize them or anything. And then the students have to come up to the box and go through it until they find what they think they want. I put some screws in there, some brads in there. I have thumbtacks and push pins. I have paper clips of all sizes and colors. I'm trying to think what else anything that I've ever used to fasten something together. And they really enjoy going through the box and finding what they think is going to work the best and taking it back to the group and then discussing with the group which one they think will work. And then when it doesn't work, going back to the box and finding something else. So I find this process to be very inventive for them, and it really encourages discovery and solving problems. Next slide. So adding a robotic arm, getting it to pivot, turn, touch, do all these things. This is the scalability of the inquiry here, taking it to the next level. Next slide. They mentioned solar panels too. You're going to definitely need something for power, and that's what you're going to need. Wedges, there are all kinds of templates for wedges to make shovels and things that scoop. A lot of the students put these on their Rovers. I think this is the most popular instrumentation that you will see on a rover. And they all like to make the scoops, the different kinds of shovels. Next slide. And there are templates for that help them, which is cool. And then you just add straws and stir sticks and various kinds of craft sticks that you have, if you have craft sticks. Next slide. In-kind planes. They also, this is another popular one, really. They like making an inclined plane out of the rover to send something smaller out onto the surface. And as you remember, Perseverance has a helicopter on it. So in my last workshop where I had Perseverance and Ingenuity as the model, a lot of them made helicopters for their rover as well. Next slide. And here you see, this one has a little mini rover coming out of the bigger rover. That was very popular with students as well. Next slide. It's important to know how to make a screw. They're an important part of a lot of different simple machines. Many of the students like making a drill because Perseverance, of course, will drill down into the surface and collect samples. So drills are also very popular. Next slide, please. Pulleys. I find that the pulley system is something that takes a little bit more time and a lot more perseverance, no pun intended, but they will definitely need a string. As I said, I use fishing line for this because it has less resistance and it's easier to use. I use probably, I'm going to say 20-pound fishing line, which is pretty thick. And I use it for so many NASA projects. I use fishing line for almost everything. So I have it around. That's another reason that I use it. I always have different kinds of beads and buttons, things of that nature that really help with designing the pulley. So anything you have like crafty stuff like that is very helpful. Sometimes I have pieces of old toys that got broken and are laying around in my basement, and I throw those in too. Do any of you have pieces of broken toys? Or do you just throw those away? Yeah, when you're in the business of discovery, keeping things is very important. Yeah, missing pieces, right? And sometimes the pieces are the most important part. Next slide, please. So here are a bunch of rovers that were made in a workshop that I had. And you can see here, the important thing of showing you this is that they're not all the same. They are not all the same at all. They have very different things on them. And they do different things. One of the best parts of this activity, at the end, I have the group or the students come up and talk about the instrumentation on their rover and explain what it's for and how they made it to the rest of the class. And this reporting out is a very important process in learning in STEM. Because engineers and scientists work together at NASA and in many places, and the reporting out process, knowing how to communicate what you discovered, how you solved the problem, and what you ended up with is very important to their success in the future, no matter what their future holds for them. Wouldn't you agree on that? The communication is important. Okay, great. Next slide, please. So I've also included, besides the resource I showed you, I can never stop myself from showing you more resources. Remember, we have 500,000 of them. So this is a series of video clips that was designed by NASA for different grade levels. Our World is designed for elementary. It's a discovery-based series of videos. The Real World is for middle school. They all have a math component in them. And then high school, they're called Launchpad because they all include something about careers in them. But this particular e-clip is on simple machines here and in space. Next slide, please. I've also included some additional resources for you on simple machines that NASA has that are, this one has 4 segments, so probably altogether about 24 lessons about simple machines. And each one is you can stand alone. So if you don't want to go all in for the rover and you want to still do some NASA simple machine lesson plans, here's a few examples of those. Next slide, please. This is inertia. So this talks about inertia and testing inertia. It talks about the force and Newton's role in talking about force and motion. So if force and motion is in your curriculum and you have to align with that, this is a great lesson on learning about inertia. As I used to say to my students, the will to be still, right? You have to act on it or it's not going anywhere. Next. This is a lesson that has all 6 simple machines. So each one of these is a separate little lesson and they all compile together, but it's called Keeping It Simple for a reason because these are very simple lessons. You may want to use some of these when you scaffold. So you may want to start with some of these lessons before you go into the rover lesson, just to give them some ideas about how to make the individual simple machines. Let's just flip through these because we're out of time. So you'll see there's all kinds of sheets for the students to complete and do the math, which is really great. If you want them to do that math and to weigh things and measure things. And then there's even a word search for simple machines. All right. So lastly, this is just information on how to go to webinars for my particular project at NASA. We are EPDC and NASA STEM Engagement and Educator Professional Development. That is my project that I work for at NASA. And we have, I think we're up to 30 webinars a month on different topics for your classroom, sharing the NASA resources. So if you're interested in attending any of those, you can go to the website, look through them and see if there's something. Like these are 2 I have coming up. I'm going to engineer a satellite and talk about wildfires. So they're literally on every topic, art, music, science, everything. Thank you all for coming today. If you have any questions, I have a minute left. Anyone with a question? Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. If you have any questions and you want to email me, you can always do that. Let me give you my email. Usually, it's really simple. It's my name at nasa.gov. So if you want to talk to me about anything, that's my job. I talk to teachers. That's what I do. You're not bothering me. Please feel free to send me an email and ask questions if you want, or if you run into something you get stuck on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for tuning in and being here with us today.
Definitely.
So I think that's all the time we have.
Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much. And I hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon.
Take care, everyone. Be safe.